I look dead.
Well, it is Halloween.
You're so right. I'm going as myself, and I'm just a dead Victorian child. Welcome back to the Commerce Collective podcast, brought to you by Flywheel. You're listening to This Month Above the Fold, a monthly series on the Commerce Collective feed where Patrick Miller, co-founder of Flywheel, and I cover the most important commerce topics each month, and this is your October 2025 episode. I'm Emma Irwin, brand marketing manager at Flywheel and host of this podcast. Today we are covering some earnings, Amazon's new Help Me Decide feature, that news that Walmart's just buying them all in Pennsylvania, and what the future of large CPG manufacturers looks like. Let's get into it. Today is Halloween. You're going to preschool Halloween right after this. I need to know, what are your kids being for Halloween?
They're a Spinosaurus and a Stegosaurus. This is very different from last year when they were both T-Rexes. So we're staying on theme, and
they're consistent.
Amy, that was fun. But we had like this little cargo bike, and so Amy just threw them on the back of that and took them to school, and so we've got dinosaurs roaming around the neighborhood. And then my colleague Christine ran into somebody the other day and they're like, do you know that weird guy who's always riding his kids around on a bike? And so today they're going to be even weirder. So anyway.
Beautiful. Other random question before we get into it. Have you ever had an Amazon package delivery that has required a signature? I need to know.
Never from Amazon, from others. What'd you do? You buying booze?
Well, I bought a $33 dog food container, and I knew it was coming from China just because it was not Prime. It was going to arrive in 2 weeks. But I got the notification that it was supposed to be delivered between today and November 7th. And then I checked the app and it was we attempted delivery on October 17th and it required a signature. And I was like, what?
It has to be by the seller. The seller must have required it, but that's odd. No, I've never.
$33. If I bought a $3,000 thing, sure, require a signature. But I had to check this because last night I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What?
Nah, I'm not sure on that one.
Crazy. Okay, we will start it off today. Earnings came out from Amazon last night. I'm curious. I very quickly glanced over things. What are your hot takes? What's the intel in there that you're seeing?
To me, the most interesting is the commentary around grocery. During the Q&A, they said it was now a $100 billion GMV business, which would make it a top 3 grocer in the U.S., that they're within perishable grocery. And so that's center store as well as perishable. They've made a big push in the last 6 months or so to add perishable. They noted in the call that it was right now in 1,000 cities, and then it will be by 2,300 by end of year. So the pace at which they're expanding this thing is unreal. And one of the things they said, sort of in the Q&A, was that the idea that the weekly stock up trip is changing. And I've noticed this in my own behavior because I do all of our shopping. And so what I found is sometimes I don't want it to show up very quickly. I'm ordering dog food and I'm like, well, the dogs have got enough food. They're fine. I'm ordering diapers. It doesn't have to be right away. And so they've rolled out, as they've made the network more mature and they've moved to the regionalization of the network, you can do things like you can add to existing order. And they said that feature has been used 80 million times so far. And so when I think of that, and then also in context of sort of the weekly grocery trip, it's this becomes asynchronous basket building. And we've talked about this, in the past, and the idea that I'm not just pushing my grocery cart around a store once per week and then doing a fill-in trip. I'm building these micro moments and building basket. And now the network's in a place where it's a better customer experience because the thing I don't I can get the speed if I want it, but even better is I can wait a couple of days, maybe it'll give me a digital credit, and I have fewer boxes. And so you cut down on the waste, it's more environmentally friendly, and it's a better customer experience, and it's more profitable. So it's a win-win across all.
I like it. I was thinking just yesterday I went to do a Target pickup order because now I'm in Target land, and I'm still in the same boat where different groceries have to come from different places, but I forgot something, of course, and I was like, can I just add it to the order? And they were like, well, you can do a separate order and it might be ready at the same time. And I was like, that's not helpful. So I look forward to Amazon building out the infrastructure in Minneapolis.
And one thing I've noticed, in ordering it, I'll just do I'll just do test orders all the time. And so I'll buy, I'm buying something and then I'll be oh, and you can also, buy some bananas or whatever. And so I'll do that. And then oftentimes it's the regular Amazon truck comes with the non-perishable, whatever the widget was. But then the perishable is then delivered by, a contractual worker within his or her car. And so it's actually 2 outbound trips when you're adding in the grocery. And that then tells me that the profit lever that they'll have longer term with this is enormous. And so right now they're going to be, losing money a lot of times on these grocery orders, but longer term as they build out the network and you have more demand in specific regions, that will become more profitable. And so one of of the things I would look for them to do is sort of like how much they steer traffic to grocery, and then when do they sort of have the network in each of these 2,300 cities to then drive that demand, and then you'll then see a bridge to profit over time as more and more people take advantage of the service.
And so you are bullish on Amazon's kind of refreshed attempt at getting grocery really up and running and doing it in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, they've never been great at physical stores. And the only, physical stores that have been great have been, Whole Foods Market, which they acquired. This is in strong contrast to Walmart, has 4,800 stores and is excellent at real estate, which is sort of it's sort of just one that you brought up around what they're doing with the mall.
Beautiful. Let's move into, we're talking Amazon's new AI-powered Help Me Decide feature, the solution you didn't know as an indecisive person. And I would love for you to start with walking me through the experience of using the thing, because Amazon thought you were way more interesting than me and is letting you actually play around.
Yeah, I had spent, just shopping for stuff. And we live in the woods, and so we got, I don't know, sticks and trees fall and whatever. So I'm looking for like a hairy homeowner little chainsaw. And then we already have a leaf blower from Husqvarna. So I was like, okay, well, like, I don't want to buy another battery. Can just spend, and then whatever. I don't know anything about chainsaws. And so I'm like bouncing around, hitting different ASINs. And then like, whatever, I got distracted. A kid was crying or something. And then, so I left and I came back the next day, and it had this little like, help me decide button at the top. And I was like, yeah, help me decide. Like, I don't know which one to get. So what's interesting is like, you have to click it. So from a financial perspective, there's obviously an incremental cost when you use the LLM, but it didn't, but they're not going to kick it off unless I hit it. So like, it's going to save money. It's not like preemptive. And then it goes through and it's like, I'm going to scan like, a gazillion products, and then I'm going to look at the ratings and reviews, and then I'm going to look at return rate, and then I'm going to look at deals, et cetera. And the joke of sort of all this agentic commerce is like, guess what the agents are going to like? Same thing the humans like: price, selection, convenience. And so then the interesting is then, what are the other data sets that Amazon has that they can then use to better inform, i.e. like return rates. So it's like not public information. And then all the ratings and reviews, which are trying very hard to block the scrapers from getting now. And so it returns, and it's sort of more curated selection. It helps me figure it out. I buy the chainsaw, and everybody's happy.
I like it. And as you mentioned, like, the data that powers this thing is what I think is so cool and sets it apart from other kind of LLMs that are trying to help you decide. It's like you can actually use the data in a really personalized way, and it's not creepy for the shopper because they clicked on the thing and they're like, hey, actually help me decide and use what you know about me.
Yeah, and also that like it is a feature on top of the query. And so, as opposed to the query being the feature. And so like, and that's where like, I think we're seeing sort of across, all the things, like even if you look at like Google's earnings, and like, so they're seeing that they are actually saying that like queries are actually going up and they're becoming more complex, and there's longer, and customers are creating more, they're spending more time, querying because the results are different. And so, what I see in sort of on both of those and these sort of incumbents is like they're figuring out ways to use the technology in a way that sort of fits within the existing workflows for their customers. That's then, additive.
And I even find in my own, the stat that, or it wasn't necessarily a stat, but it's queries going up on Google and people spending more time there. I'm even doing that myself. It's like going from best restaurants in Minneapolis to like, I want this type of food in this price range, and it will actually output what I'm looking for. And it's just an overall better experience.
Well, and Amazon called out last night in their earnings that if a customer is using Rufus, that they're 60% more likely to make a purchase. So to me, it's like, we'll see sort of how it shakes out, with advertising, but these are high intent customers. And so like, if I'm willing to wait for the LLM to run, like I really care about the thing I'm looking for. Like, I'm not just like window shopping. So how Amazon then sort of has that signal around sort of the intent with Rufus, I think will be interesting as they expose that to brands.
Got it. Amazing. Okay. Story number 2. Walmart bought a mall. That part's not that crazy because they just plan to demolish it, but they're going to build a mixed-use development in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. And the one thing I don't understand about this story is why there? I'm like walking around the Google streets of Monroeville, Pennsylvania. It's outside of Pittsburgh for anybody that's wondering. And I'm like, I still don't understand why there. But I picked this one because I'm curious if your thoughts, this one's a little bit different from our normal run of show. And then I think what's interesting is having lived in Northwest Arkansas, like, and seeing what Walmart can do to really build up an area if they try, is I'm like, maybe this is actually going to work. So what happens when retailer becomes like real estate mogul in the grand scheme of things? What are your thoughts?
I love it. There are from one AFC North City to another. We around Baltimore, we've had historic population decline. At the state level, both the city level, where Baltimore went from about 1 million people to about 600,000 today, and we even have a net population decline over the last couple of years. And so at the same time, retail has shifted, and so we have a bunch of decrepit malls. I've got one like 2 miles from my house. And so the idea that the company that, has perhaps the most experience in real estate in the world would take on that, like I see that as such a net good. There's so many malls that are either closed or abandoned. And so if they can do this and pull this off, that's awesome. It's amazing. And they're so good at real estate. And the thing I really want to look to see is okay, they do a mixed use development, great. But what do they do as far as micro fulfillment around there? And can they use this to sort of bridge to getting the seller base into the store? And so to me, that's the huge unlock. They haven't said that they're going to do that, but that's what I'd really like to see is sort of what does micro fulfillment look like at the mixed use development? And kudos for Walmart to taking it on. There's so many, cities that could use their help. And I think it's just awesome.
Something I noticed as we were talking about how your weekly grocery shopping trip has changed. And I was in the Mall of America last weekend because you have to when you move back to Minnesota. And I used to work there. But even walking around, the stores try so hard. Those are flagship stores in a way for a lot of retailers. But everything just feels kind of so uninspired. And so I'm curious to see how Walmart really plays that up. And I think there's so much opportunity to make an electronics store where it's just like Walmart but all your electronics nerds get to go somewhere. They get to emphasize fashion in a way that they normally can't within a standard grocery store. It'll be interesting to see.
I love that they're picking middle America, edge of coastal, if you will. And there are just so many malls that could use this. And so if they could turn this into something that is, that is profitable, creates a great experience, pulls net new people into the brand, it's a home run, and can't wait to see what they do.
Amazing. I'm glad I chose that one. I saw it and I was like, you know what? We're going to talk physical retail.
Oh, no, I love it. I just can't wait to learn from them. I can't wait to see it.
Perfect. Story number 3, the government shutdown. SNAP benefits are set to run out of funding by tomorrow as of the time of this recording. And I'm picking this as the base because it's this is another pressure upon our big legacy CPG manufacturers, in addition to tariffs, rising cost of production, inflation in general. It has me thinking about what sets a future successful CPG manufacturer apart from the rest. And when we were talking about when tariffs first kind of came into play a few months ago, you mentioned that it's about investing in your value brands and the premium audience isn't going to leave you. Is that still your take? What if value brands don't cut it going forward?
Okay. So one, I think it's much more challenging than just the SNAP benefits. Yes, that is, that's a huge one. And that can be up to $1,000 for a family of 4 at the poverty line. We also have, everybody is going to be experiencing increases in cost around healthcare. And so, premiums for Obamacare are going up somewhere between 8 to 26%. And folks are going to be experiencing increases in electricity costs throughout the country because of the increased demand in data centers. If I look at just Maryland, Maryland has about 60 data centers. Next door neighbors, Virginia has about 650 data centers, yet it's a regional grid. And so you sort of have it, it's not, sort of the demand, even if it is not coming from your state or your town, is then impacting ratepayers. And so we're grappling with increased cost for electricity as well. And so, so it's worse than all that. So the consumer is going to be, squeezed, sort of those that are on SNAP, everybody gets an electricity bill, and many folks around healthcare. And so across all of them, this is then going to put customers that are going to be thinking about private label and what is sort of the most efficient way. And they're also going to be thinking about sort of cash outlay would be my expectation, as opposed to sort of unit value. So if I'm a retailer, the tricky thing with increasingly so much of the value of these retailers is being driven by their ads business. And guess who doesn't buy ads? Private label. And so, it's a tricky, handoff for the retailers. If they bias too much towards private label, they're going to lose out on any potential, for an ads business. And so they have to make that calculation of how much do I want to focus on private label, and how much do I want to focus on the ads business? And, this is going to be, it's going to be tricky for the brands.
This is a naive question, but something I think about is, okay, we all know private label, it's going to be less expensive. This is where consumers turn when they're in a pinch generally. Why can't the really big CPG manufacturers figure out how to produce goods at that same kind of cost and then pricing? I'm why do the retailers have it and the big manufacturers don't?
Yeah, well, they do. You'll see tiered brands. So something like Love's versus Pampers, where Love's is, sort of, more price conscious, and Pampers is going to be, sort of a more premium experience. You'll also see brands experiment with, sort of the form and the size based off of the retailer. And so it ends up being sort of a slope calculation, and think of it sort of like the profit per unit. So like at a Costco, your cash outlay might be higher because it's a big pack, but on a unit level, it's a better value for the customer. But you have to be able to have that cash outlay. The polar opposite of that is sort of the dollar class of trade, where sort of on a unit level it's not as good a value, but that your cash outlay is a lot lower. And so a lot of this ends up being sort of an exercise in selection, and depending on sort of where that selection is by retailer will then sort of drive some of the shifts. If we look back over the last post-inflation and now some more inflation coming, somebody like Walmart has been sort of such a net winner. And I think the amazing thing that Walmart's pulled off is not only are they taking share from like the dollar class of trade, but they're also getting these affluent customers, especially through their e-com business. And so they're growing on sort of both sides, which is really impressive. And I would expect them to be net share gainers, depending on sort of what happens with inflation in the next, let's say 3 months or so.
I've seen a lot of, just for like cultural commentary additions, I've seen a lot of in some of the Arkansas Facebook groups that I was in, people are posting these like all these ideas for family meals under $10, and everything is a great value product because it has to be. If they're a real person, it's like, yeah, that is, you can get a bag of peas for 75 cents, and then that's a side for the family.
On the positive side, with Walmart, if I'm a national brand, the private label can pull people into the store. And then there's the opportunity to sort of communicate on the shelf of why the branded product, is a superior product and worth the additional price. And so to me, that's a combination of both sort of, having the physical availability, as well as investing in sort of the brand building, so that when customers are at shelf, they say, oh, it is worth, me buying the branded product. And, that's not easy, but I think that's critical for brands.
Got it. Okay. I think that wraps us up. I have one last question for you, because you mentioned data centers. There's this question on the internet. If you split the country into the 4 different corners and everybody went to war, which corner do you think would win?
Definitely not the Midwest, because they're too nice. But on the power grids things, what I actually think is the more interesting on the power grids is the frequency in which the hyperscalers, when they're building data centers now, are creating their own electricity. And so they're siting these things in like rural Texas or like the Southeast, and sort of where they don't have to pull permits, so they can sort of expedite it and build it as quickly as possible. And then they're actually like buying their own turbines through, Siemens or whoever the heavy industrial manufacturers are, and creating their own gas plants. So they're siting it next to gas, creating their own turbines that then power these data centers. So I just think it's sort of fascinating of how they are saying, hey, we don't even want to rely on the grid, and we're just going to create our own network of energy.
There you go. An avoidant and educational answer.
Hey, you can pin me down on that one. What?
Beautiful. All right. That'll actually wrap us up. And that's it for this month's Commerce News. Join us next month for our recap of what happened and what's interesting in commerce. I'm Emma Irwin, and we'll see you next time.